Major Susie Erickson with the Salvation Army, and I'm in the studio today with Major Vicki Perez. And Vicki and I have crossed paths throughout our lifetime. I remember her as a teenager in the Carolinas, and then our paths crossed again when we both served for a period in Alabama and Mississippi, Louisiana region of our country. And Vicki, you grew up in the Salvation Army, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And your parents were ministers in the Army?
Yes.
And you had a pretty normal childhood, right?
Right, yes.
You had one of those childhoods that some of us dream about with a mom and a dad in the home.
Right. I was born into a family where I never knew fear. All the rest of the typical childhood woes were present, but fear never darkened my mind, ever. I was fortunate to be the youngest of 6 children. My maternal grandmother died within a month of my birth. So as a baby needing to be nurtured, I became the object of a powerful love that comes through grieving. My paternal grandmother was always present until her death during my elementary school years, and my mom and daddy treated me as a gift from God. As I aged, I knew that I was their last naturally born child, so I became and have remained their little one.
And you kind of probably felt like a princess, right?
Yes, exactly. Always. Growing up as the baby born into the family with 4 older brothers and a sister, and because my parents were ministers with the Salvation Army, I can't remember a time when other people weren't present in our family. And so I have lots of older siblings that I consider family because they lived in our home when I was growing up. And so family for us was anybody who God had placed, not just blood, but were in our hearts as well. And being the child of ministers, we would often move to new towns and folks would learn about our family, and then we'd have all these other children that would just come to our house. And so our house became just the fun place on the block, and we always had extra kids, and I always felt loved. And later in life, I learned, that those children some of them were bullied or abused, but that was never my story. I never had to worry about that. I was the little one. Nobody would mess with me.
Right.
And so I was very, very fortunate. And it was somewhat a fairy tale. As a child growing up, I didn't understand it then as I do now. I didn't know that there was different ways and different circumstances that people were raised and things like that. But yes, I was very much considered kind of like a princess, yes.
But the story of Cinderella reminds us that the fairy tale doesn't always last, does it?
Right.
And the stroke of midnight really happens to all of us, and it happened to you as well.
Well, I knew early in my life that God had called me into ministry in the Salvation Army. Our family is kind of a mini seminary. I grew up in the wisdom and knowledge of God very quickly. And to this day, I thank God for every Sunday school teacher and Salvation Army officer that have, nurtured me spiritually. As a young adult, I married, and we attended the Salvation Army Seminary, College for Officer Training. And we were blessed with 2 sons, Zachary and Caleb, and who are still a blessing now. And then we lost a child in utero, Kaylee. And that is when I first understood heartache and pain like I never thought I could.
Yeah.
And so I can't put on a happy face about that because that pain is still present.
Right.
But I have to emphasize there was still no fear. By this time, my dad's health was failing, and he looked at me with tears streaming down his cheeks, and he kissed my forehead, his little one's forehead, and he said, "Kaylee is in the hands of the only one who loves her more than you do."
Mm-hmm.
And my good and precious dad was right. And then just a few months after experiencing that stillbirth, we found out we were expecting another child, and we named her Grace, for we had found favor in the eyes of her maker, and she's now my little one. And so, my husband and I continued in our ministry roles. I felt like everything I had ever dreamed with Grace's birth had come true. My dream my fairy tale, because I had just wanted a little girl, and with her and all that her birth brought and taught me, and the healing that took place, because she was born 1 year to the day that we buried Kaylee.
Wow.
And so it's a remarkable sense of the love and mercy that God shows us. And so we continued in our ministry. God blessed us by opening doors we never expected. Laughing at home, ministering to others, and then them ministering to us. It was joyful and full, and then until it wasn't anymore. And the death of my father 7 years ago, and then my brother 2 years later, was very difficult for me. I lost 2 of my protectors, and I was heartbroken. But when I doubted, God held me closer to himself. And then 5 years ago, just 6 weeks after my brother was promoted to glory, I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. My life became a series of scans and tests and surgeries, radiation and treatments, and the treatments continue to this day. But God was faithful, and there still was no fear. I was still surrounded by my band of protectors, and the God of miracles was present. My sweet mama cared for me. My family and friends prayed me through those difficult days. And then, for reasons not related to my cancer diagnosis, my husband and I separated and then divorced, and life became very complicated. I found my version of Cinderellas' glass slipper was not just broken, it was shattered. My life verse, found in Jeremiah 29:11, took on a whole new meaning for me. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. There were days that verse propelled me to get out of bed and seek his face, because I was so unsure of what the future held for me. And I came to understand and believe that whatever goes bad, God will work it for good.
Yes, he will.
It's what he does. He turned water into wine. He will turn the broken into beautiful. There's many details that I've not shared, for God has refashioned all the broken pieces of that shattered slipper of my life and formed it into a vessel useful for the ministry in which he's placed me.
What did you learn about yourself during those years? Because you grew up in this home where you were protected and loved, and went through a season in your marriage when you were protected and loved, and all of a sudden you're in this place where those protectors are no longer there. What did you learn about yourself in that?
I learned that strength is there whether we recognize it or not. If someone told me that I would be where I am today 5 years ago, that I would have lived through what I've lived through and be strong, I would have said there's no way I would make it through that. But today, the strength that comes from the Lord, without even having to think about it, I just do every day. Because having faced my own mortality, it changed my view on life. It changed my priorities. It changed things that would normally upset me or would concern me. Not anymore. The little things, they don't concern me anymore, because I know God has proven through the miracle that is my life that I'm able to sit here today and share my story. He has proven to me that he's faithful, that even on those dark days when we don't know how we will get up and make it through that darkness, that he is there with us and he is guiding us. And so for me, I became more and more aware of God's providential care. Sometimes growing up, I felt like, being the child of ministers, I believed what I believed because my mom and daddy taught us this. And in my heart, I believed it because that's what they taught us. But I knew it, having experienced those horrible situations and circumstances, and I knew that God would give me the strength to make it through each day, emotionally and physical strength, to make it through each and every day.
And you just celebrated a big milestone in your life, didn't you?
Yes. It's been 5 years, and I'm cancer free. I just had another PET scan that I have every 4 months, and those are still continue to be no cancer, and so it's a miracle.
And you are among the 22%, right?
Yes, 22% of women that survive that diagnosis. I don't even want to think my adult life has been easy. It wasn't, and it hasn't been, but God is in control. And I have to be reminded of that on days when I would think that ministry is not what I thought my life is not what I thought it would look like. When I looked at it 6 years ago, even my life, when I thought where I would be today, it's nothing like what I thought. But God is in control, and He makes everything good. And I'm so thankful for that, and I just praise Him.
What would you say to a woman today who has faced the diagnosis that you faced, has maybe even had a spouse that's left in the middle of a crisis of her health? What would you say to her today?
Well, don't take anything for granted. You can live through those experiences. God is greater than any fear or situation or circumstances. He will keep holding you up and carrying you through and making a way out of the fears and difficult situations and circumstances. And the thing that caused you the most pain in life might just be the thing that produces the greatest power. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." And we have to grasp hold of God's promises and choose a life with Him. The other thing I would say is that our answers are always found in God. Do everything you can to read the Bible and pray without ceasing. You can start right now. You can start right where you are. He will answer every prayer when prayed in faith. I think about it this way. When I was young, late at night, I would walk to the kitchen and get some cold water. And in that darkness, I knew exactly where everything was, including the glasses and the ice and the water. And I would take that water down the long hall to my room in complete darkness. I'd take a drink and put the glass down on the bedside table. I knew where everything would be. I had faith to know the bed was there to lay back down and gently go to sleep. There are maybe some that are going through an unknown darkness, and they're afraid, and everything around seems strange. But we can trust that God knows exactly where we are, and He will guide us through.
Oh, yes, He will. Cinderella's prince sought her. He wanted to return what she had lost. Mm-hmm. And Jesus is our prince, and He seeks us out when we're hurting and we're going through seasons of devastation.
Exactly.
He seeks us out.
Yes.
And He has the life that we thought we had lost.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story, and for encouraging those who are in a season of darkness right now that can't quite find their way. These words today, we pray, give them hope.
Absolutely.
In their journey.
Yes. Thank you.